It's Tips from the Top Floor, episode 916 for September the 8th, 2022.
Tips from the top floor, tips from the top, alright, from the top floor.
Hey, hello, welcome, it's Chris. You are listening to Tips from the Top Floor, the longest running photography podcast on the planet. I'm still very happy to be able to say that. A day late. I wish I could tell you that I did this on purpose because I wanted to have the Apple announcement in this episode. But no, I didn't. I just did run out of steam, honestly. There's just too many things. And then my personal bandwidth is kind of limited. And it's a work-life balance thing, or it's a podcast life balance thing. And sometimes life just takes over. But I'm here. Bringing you this episode this week with a bunch of topics. Just a new one that just came out. Yes, we will briefly talk about the iPhone 14. But another one that just dropped is if you have played with Stable Diffusion, we talked about this here, the image generator that is disrupting the whole field because it's open source and it's creating quite an explosion of new developments and open source developments and things, and it's showing up in lots of apps and things now. So weeks of development are happening, or let's say months of development are happening in days right now. There's a lot of energy flowing into this thing, and that's amazing. But there's also the beta.dreamstudio.ai site by Stable Diffusion themselves, where you can use the system. It's paid for because, of course, they have to provide GPU power, and that's what you pay for. But it's not very expensive, and it's a great place to play with these kind of systems. And yes, Stable Diffusion has just added a functionality that others have already kind of tickled out of the open source part of it. But now it's officially available on dreamstudio.ai, and that is their image-to-image functionality. Like it's in the web interface. And that means you can now drop in, let's say a crayon drawing of something and make it into a stunning photograph by just giving it that base photo, that initial image, and then giving it a text prompt that helps. And people are using this in really interesting ways. Like for example, I've seen some people drop in pictures of old video game characters and making them into real people, that kind of stuff, or making doing a style transfer this way from photographs to GTA type imagery and that kind of stuff. So yeah, Stable Diffusion. If you haven't played with it, hey, go ahead and do it. It's eye-opening, I would think. So, Stable Diffusion. Oh, here's a quick one I just recently came across that I find interesting. It's initially I thought, oh, that's just old film crap, old analog stuff. But turns out, no, it's not really. I'm talking about 12K motion picture scans, because this is actually cutting edge technology where they combine motion picture film with high-end scanners. And those are, the whole machinery, it's not the newest machinery, but it's really super high resolution. So, you know that a lot of Hollywood directors and other directors still use film for various reasons, one being that the quality is amazing. That's also one of the reasons why a lot of old movies could be re-released in 4K, because film has that quality. It just needs to be scanned properly. So what they're doing here in a lab, and that's a video, I'm going to link that video of the lab that does that. They scan film, like movie, motion picture film, at 12K, which is a high resolution. So that is a great look behind the scenes. I dig these kind of things a lot. Let's talk about the iPhone 14. The iPhone 14. Yeah, been announced yesterday, and of course, and I'm not gonna go. This is not an iPhone channel. This is not a smartphone channel. But smartphones are part of our photography today. It's no denying. Actually, they're taking over. Panasonic is now stopping making compact cameras because the smartphones have eaten up that market, and there's nothing left for the traditional camera makers in those markets. And of course, the iPhone. The new iPhone that has been announced yesterday comes with updates to the cameras, and I just want to briefly touch on a few things. The iPhone 14, not the Pro version, the regular version, is now like last year's iPhone 13 Pro. Same processor, but a camera, not the telephoto cam or not the ultra wide camera. I'm not even sure. Didn't really look at that part that closely. But anyway, only 2 cameras and great phones. I'm a fan. I've had iPhones since the 3GS, the one with the black soap bar, plastic soap bar kind of thing. And the Pro version, the more expensive version, the more photography centered version, even though I would say all the iPhones, the cameras are the killer feature. I mean, yes, there's a lot of connectivity and so on, but again, years ago, I heard a number that at Apple, there's like 600 people working in the photography camera department. 600 people making sure the cameras are the best they can be at that form factor. And I'm pretty sure it's more now. So yeah, the Pro version is the one that gets the best cameras, and if you look at them now, I mean, I'm looking at well, actually, it's in my pocket. Let me get it out. The 13 Pro, which I'm gonna keep for at least another year because it's perfect. It's great. I don't need the upgrade yet. But anyway, looking at those cameras, I mean, those are huge and they protrude quite a bit out of the case. Those 14 Pro cameras protrude even more. It's amazing what and they will get away with it because, yeah, there's physics. There's physics in the cameras that you can't just ignore. So that's what they're doing. They're making them physically even larger. Also, the main camera has a larger, like 48 megapixel sensor now. That's the first megapixel bump in quite a long time. Normal photos will still be 12 megapixels because they use pixel binning. They put like 4 pixels into one, and that increases the quality and the light sensitivity. The sensor is bigger, but you can use all the 48 megapixels in ProRAW. So if you switch to the RAW format, then you'll get 48 megapixels out of this, which I'm not even sure. It's more than any of my DSLRs. Now, let's figure out how good they are, those pixels. But there's no reason with decent light that they can't be amazing. So there's also new 2x zoom mode, which is not a digital zoom. It's optical zoom. And the way they do it is they crop from those 48 megapixels the center, and that is a 2x crop factor. So it's optical 2x zoom level. And notice how I'm saying 2x and that's 3x, 4x, whatever. Because that nomenclature, yeah, Apple has been using it consistently. They don't really, in their marketing, they don't give you the millimeters focal length equivalent to, because that's complicated. They just go 0.5x, 1x, 2x, 4x. Anyway, or 3x. Anyway, what do those more pixels give you? Better low light? I already talked about this. The video modes have changed a bit. Like they now do 24 frames per second for like a more cinematic feeling video. They touted their better anti-shake. So gimbals, they want to make gimbals obsolete, which I'm all for. And then the selfie camera, which is quite an important camera, actually, has autofocus. So, and of course, the whole thing is filled with a ton of AI and neural processing as cameras go today. So I might actually I have these categories for things. If you look at the show notes, you can see that each of those items I'm talking about here has categories, one or multiple. It had photo so far, but now I added AI to it because AI still plays an important role. All right, a piece of news. That just I think it's a couple of weeks old now, but apparently, I mean, one thing, if you happen to be flying, we all know, don't say the B word on an airport, at an airport, the bomb word, but yeah, here's a photo bomb of a different kind of caliber, because there's a story of a photographer who was on a flight, and he apparently had an older camera, something that, I don't know, looked complicated, and he had that on the airplane. And there's this weird story of a woman being convinced that guy with a camera was in fact not using a camera, but some explosive device. So she made a whole big brouhaha and made the pilots do an emergency landing, and by screaming, "You'll kill us," and so on. So, yeah. And that led to the photographer being detained for hours, and now he's suing. And it's an interesting story because it kind of reflects on society not really knowing about these things anymore. I mean, people associate a camera with a slab of glass in your pocket now, and the things, and maybe the, in air quotes, professional cameras, the DSLRs and things that you see on the sidelines of sports events, that kind of stuff. So yeah, weird story. I have a similar story or a story along those lines from years ago when Monica and I went to Vienna to shoot large format photography in the city. There's Vienna has these inner courtyards, old buildings, beautiful architecture, great stuff. And it's going to be part of the Eastern European photo road trip next year. If you want to come along, discoverthetopfloor.com. Anyway, that was years ago. We both had our backpack on, with the photo backpack with the cameras, the folded up Chamonix 4x5 field cameras. And I was the first in the security area of the airport. It was early morning, like a time where mostly business people fly. So there were suits in front of me, suits behind me, Monica behind me, directly behind me. And then I put my backpack on the conveyor belt, and it goes through the X-ray. And the young lady at the monitor turns pale. I could see her face sink, and so I offered information. I mean, I told her that there's a camera in there. It's a large format camera, and she completely ignored me. She did not acknowledge me whatsoever. She waved over a colleague, and then two ladies were looking into that monitor, and then they got a guy over from like a police guy, a border protection kind of person, who would then come over to me, still not really acknowledging me, pushing people in front of me, further in front of me, and the people behind me further back. And then they closed like big glass doors. So the three of us were in sort of a compartment then. And they kept discussing, and they kept, I heard them like whisper to each other, we need to get such and such, we need to make sure you can get such and such here. And well, turns out such and such was an older guy. He was, I don't know, in his 60s. He had a gray beard, and he came over and looked like he was the manager, and they were pretty inexperienced. So Mr. Such and Such leaned over, looked at the monitor, and asked the lady in front of the monitor, so tell me, where did you spot the trigger? So she must have seen something in that monitor that looked like some trigger for an explosive device or something. And I kept making myself heard. Like, this is a camera. I addressed him, and he was the first one to look over and nod, and with a knowing nod, it's like, yeah, it's okay. So he used it as a training exercise. But I was in there, like I was under the impression that it wouldn't be long until someone held a gun at me. So yeah, they then had me open the backpack, and I get to demonstrate and unpack and unfold the Chamonix 4x5, and he showed them, and I got to like, and this whole thing took like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, and people behind the glass were very, very impatient, because of course they are business flyers and business travelers, and they need to be on their plane and important business and stuff. But they took their sweet time to make this into an exercise. At the same time, Monica, behind the glass behind me, she was trying to tell the other travelers that there's nothing to worry about, and we're just photographers and so on. And and then they let me go, and I just turned around to Mr. Such and Such and said, watch out, the next person has one of those too. So yeah, that was my story of being misjudged, I don't know. What does that mean? Does that mean we can't travel with fancy cameras anymore? Maybe be a bit more upfront, like showing people, telling people upfront, watch out, there's something weird in there, just so you know. We used to do this when transporting film, telling people like, just so you know, there's a lead bag in there, there's film in there, and could we have that hand checked and so on. So yeah. How do you approach that? I mean, you let me know how you would approach that kind of situation. To maybe, I don't want to say to defuse it, air quotes, ahead of time, so nothing strange happens. Maybe it comes down to being a communication exercise. So let me know. You can send in feedback to tfttf.com/hi, tfttf.com/hi. I love your written feedback. I love your recorded audio feedback. Get your voice on the show. All right, last item for today is do you remember the stories about which was it, Galaxy S21? The 100x zoom that could take like, I mean, 100x zoom in a smartphone, and that could take like sharp images of the moon. That was one of the flagship features. If you take your regular phone from, I don't even know when that was, years ago, and you point that at the moon, all you get is like a black sky and a washed out white blob. The phones are just not made for that. So when that came out, it was first of all one of those mind-blowing features, because you could now take a picture of the moon with the craters showing and everything. And it's amazing. If you have a decent telephoto lens and you know the Mooney 11 rule, then of course you know that you can shoot a picture of the moon handheld with a telephoto lens with your mirrorless or DSLR. No problem. Not hard to do, but if your photography frame of reference is your smartphone, then that was mind-boggling. That was quite a feature. And then pretty soon we had another moon conspiracy theory, because the story emerged that Samsung used AI to detect the moon, which I think that was probably what they were doing. Okay. But then they would not just use AI to detect the moon and then handle it appropriately. But they would also use AI to replace the moon with better imagery, because the moon always shows us the same side, more or less. So if you have a bunch of strategic pictures in your memory, and you could just replace that or blend the details in or something. And that was the theory, and I did for a while subscribe to that, because it was amazingly good and amazingly detailed what they could do with these phones. And Now, follow the link in the show notes for an interesting write-up. Someone went down that rabbit hole to figure out if that rumor was actually true. And while it's not 100% conclusive, it really seems that that AI moon replacement thing was probably not a thing. And I was under the impression that it was quite likely that's how they kind of cheated a bit. But turns out that it doesn't really look like they did. So yeah, I have to adjust my reality here. Anyway, that was it for this episode of Tips from the Top Floor. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being subscribed. You guys and girls are the best. I love you all. And you can, of course, leave feedback for the show at tfttf.com/hi. And that includes writing, recording a voicemail, or attaching a file and send it to me. And Mark has done exactly that. And Mark writes, Chris, fantastic to have you back. I've only just realized the podcast is up again and now have to binge to catch up. Listen for years, disappointed when TFTTF went silent, and after we have all struggled through the last 2 years, great to hear you back, and the return for me signals the worst is over. We're all back on the right track. More strength to you, Chris. Thanks for your work. Mark from Sydney, Australia. Yeah, that time since mid-March 2020, that has been a struggle. And more than you would think. And that, of course, is the main reason why TFTTF was silent for so long. But, on the one hand, I want to give you this positive outlook and say, yeah, the worst is over. We're all going to be all right. But for me, it still is a struggle. I mean, I must be really honest about this. For example, at this point, I still can't see myself going back to doing like 5 photo tours a year. And the multiple reasons. But, I mean, for example, I still can't really see myself going back on doing those 5 photo tours a year with all flying, all the CO2. And it's not just my CO2, it extends out. It makes other people want to do that again. And with our climate going down the gutter right now, that is not going to come back anytime soon for me, that travel lifestyle, if at all. I really don't know. And honestly, that's kind of painful, because not only did I love the travel, but it was also an important part of my income, and that is pretty much gone now. So that's one of the reasons why I came up with the Tesla-based micro photo tours, the Eastern Europe photo road trip that I just did the scouting for. That's one of those. Again, it's not easy, but in some ways, I mean, things are definitely better than a year ago. So, I do appreciate the positive outlook. I'm more of an optimistic than a pessimistic person. I put myself in the optimistic realist type of position, while being a nerd and trying to understand everything around me, which includes pandemics and climate and things like that, which includes a lot of exponential components that people are really not good at feeling. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag. But in general, the outlook is more positive than negative for me. So that's that. Let's see. That is the end of the episode. Next up, in about 10 minutes, I'm gonna head out to go to a doctor's appointment, because one of the nice souvenirs I brought back from the Eastern European Photo Road Trip Scouting Tour is pink eye. I have an eye infection, and it's not going away, so I have to... Yeah, I need my eyes. Not just for looking, also for photography. So yeah, that's keep your fingers crossed that that's gonna be better soon, because it's really annoying. Anyway, follow Tips from the Top Floor on Twitter at TFTTFphoto. And of course, you can support this show over at Patreon, tfttf.com/Patreon. Your support makes a huge difference, and I don't think that I meant it as much as I do now. It really helps. Thank you very much. And now go out and take amazing photos. Be extra nice to each other. Really do think of that, because there's so much crap going on. Be nice to each other, okay? And of course, happy shooting.